Let's talk about Linux. Linux is pretty much everywhere. Probably the computer which you are watching this video on runs on Linux. No. I'm not talking about the computer which you are actually using. That is your MacBook or laptop. I'm talking about the server which is actually making sure this video reaches to your computer and you can see the video. So Linux is pretty much everywhere. Hey there everyone, my name is Manjunath and in this video let's talk about Linux. Let me tell you my first encounter with Linux. Few years back, probably 9 or 10 years back, we were in the school and one of my friend came and suddenly said he destroyed some software inside his computer, so he had to reinstall Windows, and instead of reinstalling Windows, by mistakenly he ended up installing something called as Ubuntu. And back then I had no idea what is Linux or like what is Ubuntu. So when I actually asked him like what is that, another friend of mine said it is Linux. So Ubuntu is some Linux operating system, and that friend ended up installing that particular thing. That's the first time when I heard about Linux. Then after few years I started getting into Linux computer on web hosting platform, and when I bought my first web hosting online, that time I understood that this folder structure looks like it is something different from actual Windows file system, which was back then pretty much standard, which everybody used to use Windows. And when I actually started to understand that okay, this is the Linux file structure and there are files inside it arranged in certain way. If you put the website in www folder and index.html will load up in the web. So if you're not understanding this, that's absolutely fine. Back then I didn't understand also, so not a big deal. And after that there were so many tries for me to get into Linux, and pretty much every one of those tries have failed miserably due to one or the other reason. Then when I was in second year degree, that is maybe 6 years back, 5 or 6 years back, that time one of my sir started talking about Linux with me, and when he told certain terms like SSH, SFTP, I started getting fascinated because I had no idea what those are, and I had to learn that particular thing. Without it, I was not able to do certain things with our college server, which actually fascinated me because it was literally connected to internet and we were able to access it from class as well as I wanted to access it from my home also. So there was no other option but to learn about Linux in depth. That time I started to focus much more on Linux, and pretty much within a day or two I got familiar, and I with that particular sir I was able to get access to the server, and I was accessing server from home itself, which made me feel like I'm pro at it. Then once I got comfortable with accessing Linux and running some command using command line. This was not actually graphical user interface that include mouse and all. This is just server, and you will be able to just write some commands and get files from server. Think of it like Google Drive, but it is internal only for our college, and there was some authentication in order to get access to it so that no other people can access it. So it was like really good experience with the server side of things, but I wanted more in my life. I wanted to get actual Linux desktop using which I can run certain softwares like VS Code and maybe browser and other things also. In Windows, I was never been able to get into programming because opening up IDE itself was taking pretty much 10 to 15, or like I don't remember, because nowadays we used SSD everywhere. So it used to take pretty much minute, I believe, in order to open one simple IDE and start coding in that particular thing. So when I started to actually code and I wanted to build certain things, Windows was not operating system which was meant for me. So what I did, I installed Linux in my computer and I pretty much left Windows operating system and started using Linux. And oh boy, the experience with Linux was so good. Probably something which was taking 1 minute to open in Windows system took just about 15 to 20 seconds in Linux without even using any kind of SSD or high-end computer. So I actually got into web development and I became quite expert in it, and I'm still trying to get better at it, but that was the phase which was really amazing with Linux for learning. So if you are like actually want to get into web development, so I guess you must have Linux or even Mac, and that time you will understand how does actual programming or actual development works. So that's my experience with Linux, and I'm still fascinated by it. And if you're a developer or if you are just student who wants to experiment, I strongly suggest you to try Linux. It is free and open source operating system. You can try Ubuntu, Linux Mint. Linux Mint is my favorite distribution, or Pop OS, and there are so many other Linux distributions. Pick any one of those and try to install it using virtual machine. Then once you are familiar with Linux concept, go ahead and install it side by your Windows. So that's it for this video, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for watching more videos like this, and see you soon. Bye bye.